Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Alicia, and I'm the owner of Alicia Law PLLC, a trust and estates law firm, and with a special focus on women and making sure that they understand the transition. So when we had our board meeting talking about the forum, I was me, the lonely woman, and then the amazing men. And we were talking about who are going to be our speakers. And I said, guys, are we crazy? We have to have amazing women. And Mark, being the fantastic leader that he is, called me and said to me, Natalie, you asked and I delivered. And not just did I get one, but I got two wonderful women for this panel. So I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce these fantastic people. First is our moderator, Mark Kravitz. He's a dear friend and just a wonderful person. He's the president of the New York chapter of Exit Planning Institute. He recently received an award at the Exit Planning Institute's International Conference as Leader of the Year. And I can personally attest to the fact that that was 100% accurate. And all of us here, Mark, really feel your presence and all that you do for this organization, so thank you. And it's the second award for Mark in the last 3 years. So Mark Kravitz will be moderating the discussion between Pamela Hendrickson and Dina Dwyer-Owens. Pamela is the Chief Operating Officer. Pamela, say hi. And Vice Chairman of Strategic Initiatives at the Riverside Company, a $5.7 billion global private equity firm. Riverside partners with small companies, providing both financial and intellectual capital. As COO, Pam manages a number of teams, including deal origination and fundraising. And as Vice Chairman, she oversees the development of new initiatives and supervises Riverside's non-control strategies. Since her arrival in 2006, Riverside has invested in over 200 companies and raised nearly $4 billion. Dina Dwyer-Owens. Dina Dwyer-Owens is the co-chair of the Dwyer Group. She's a certified franchise executive with more than 34 years of industry experience, 15 years as the CEO of the Dwyer Group. That business now includes 12 franchise brands and more than 2,600 franchises around the world. Collectively, those service brands make more than 3 million customer calls a year and account for more than $1.3 billion in system-wide sales. Now, I know that you all are thinking, what amazing boss ladies we have here. And in fact, it's no coincidence that Dina participated in CBS's Emmy-winning hit reality show, Undercover Boss, and the first ever special episode, Undercover Boss, Epic Bosses, of which our ladies certainly are.
Excellent. So that must have been fun, the Undercover Boss. How was that?
It was fun. It was a lot of work, though. And I have to update you. She had given you a bit of an update. So because of private equity, that was filmed 4 years ago, and we were at $850 million, 1,560 franchises. Today, we have 12 franchise companies, 2,600 franchisees, $1.3 billion. And we thank private equity for helping us take our company to that level. I'm no longer the CEO, I'm co-chairing the company. So as kind of a daughter of a founder, I made some decisions about where I think I could best spend my time to help promote the company and have a fantastic CEO in place running it.
Excellent. And you have a couple of slides over
Yeah,
there.
just quickly, so a little more information about the Dwyer Group. So we're a values-guided world leader of franchise brands focused on repairing, maintaining, and enhancing customers' homes and businesses. So every one of you should be a customer of our brands. And if you're not today, I'll be happy to send you an electronic coupon and give you discounts on getting to use our brands, wonderful franchisees. And our strategic intent, we're going to talk about this just a little bit later, is really to be the world leader in providing specialty premium services to homeowners. And we've started a new overarching brand that'll be launched early next year called Neighborly, a community of home service experts. So when you need any home services, you can come to the Dwyer brands for those needs and trust that we'll take great care of your homes and businesses.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think that covered, yep, that was the slides.
Perfect. So Pam, as a matter of introductory, could you explain your business and how it makes money?
Sure. So we're a private equity firm. Kyle did a good job explaining what it is that we do. We focus on the small end of the middle market, commonly known as the SEM. Actually, we're a little more than 5.7 billion since I sent that bio. But we operate through 7 strategies, 4 in North America, 4 are control buyouts, so what Kyle referred to as majority recap. 2 are in North America, 1 is in Europe, and 1 is in developed Asia. Sort of 1 to 30 million in EBITDA between those. The non-control strategies, 1 is really making minority investments in companies that need money for some reason. Could be to buy out a shareholder, could be to make an acquisition, very flexible capital structures, could be debt, could be equity, depending on what the owner wants. We also have a very small software lending fund that is making loans to profitable, so not growth equity, little, profitable companies, structured like royalties, so that the repayment increases as the revenue increases, and then finally a straight up credit fund, which we've just launched. So that's what we do. And in terms of making money, we also are a very values-based culture. The first value in ours is investors first. Our goal is to make money for investors, largely the pension funds. So all those teachers and firemen who retire, we're trying to help make sure their retirement is successful. So that is our goal, to build equity value so that when we go to sell the company, sometimes for the second time, we are guaranteeing those retirements.
Well, let's stay with the values theme. You have a wonderful code of value in your book, and also you mentioned it on the video. Can talk us through the code of values? I know that's very important for you.
It is. So our company was founded by my father, Don Dwyer, so maybe some of you are in a family operated business. And he started the company with a clear set of values, and he coined it as code of values. He took the company public in '93, died of a sudden heart attack in '94. He and I were great friends. He said going public killed him because it took some controls away from him, a real entrepreneur. You guys didn't laugh, but if he were here, he would have laughed at that. So in '94, he died of a sudden heart attack, and one of our biggest fears as a management team was we'd lose this special culture that was created around our core values. So just very clear about who we are, what we stand for, and the kind of people we want to do business with. So we took his original values and we operationalized them. So basically we called them the Operationalized Code of Values, and it's under the acronym of RICH, R-I-C-H. R is for respect, I for integrity, C for customer focus, H for having fun. So we say we live rich at the Dwyer Group. At the end of the day, we're in business to make money, but it's really about people. And we know when we treat people with respect and dignity with our values, provide a quality service or product, the profits always seem to follow in a big way. So the values are the foundation for our success at the Dwyer Group.
I'm going to have a shameless promotion for her book.
I did not ask for that face to be on there.
She did not ask, but so yes, so it's a great book. It's called Live Rich. R is for respect, I is for integrity, C is for customer focus, and H is for having fun. So if all businesses can live rich, you'll all do exceptionally well. So it's a great book. I read it, and I do recommend for everybody to write it down, and book sales will go up, hopefully, and
Thank you, Mark.
all will be good. Pam, private equity firms have a certain reputation of being pretty ruthless. Does the code of values actually matter to you, or is it just the numbers?
Well, it certainly matters. I can't speak for the entire industry. I can speak for certainly my firm, where values matter a lot. And I would say we have a pretty big ESG organization in our firm, and we added V. So we made it ESG plus V. When we diligence a company, we actually score by AB, typical grading on all of those issues. If the V gets a low grade, we just will pass. So bad values are a problem. But we are a pretty operationally focused firm. So we want a firm where outside input is going to be accepted. And in Dina's firm, her code of values that ask clarifying questions meant that the entire culture was one where they really wanted outside input, and that's a great company for us to invest in. A company where the owner is going, I don't need any help, I'm perfect. We're just going to take a pass on that, because that's just not we're not going to be able to add value in a situation like that.
Okay. Dina, walk us through the moment that you realized you needed help. Why did you need help? What were your goals and objectives? And why did you finally choose a private equity firm?
Right. So we were publicly traded, as I mentioned, and although we were thinly traded, so our family owned about 67% of our publicly traded company, so it made it hard to get institutional investors. So after working very hard, growing the earnings year over year mostly, we had one year we didn't do so well, 2001, we said it's time to do something different. The stock's not appreciating. As shareholders, we're frustrated because we're not seeing any growth in all the hard work that we're doing, and so were our shareholders. So we said, why don't we just see what's out there? We hired a banker, and they put a whole list together of potential strategic buyers. Kyle, somebody had asked that question earlier. And so we thought that's all that was out there. Potential buyers, Home Depot, Lowe's, those kinds of folks might be interested in our brands. And then 9/11 hit, so that process got shut down very quickly. And then early in 2002, we started getting calls from private equity groups. I didn't know what a private equity group was, and when I tried to investigate it, I heard negative things, as you said kind of a moment ago. Money-hungry people from New York was what I heard. You're kidding, guys in New York would be money-hungry? Come on. So, by the way, my father grew up in New York, so we're New Yorkers by heart. So we decided to entertain these private equity suitors. Riverside had a young, ambitious VP who would not leave me alone. He kept calling me, and I'm like, look, I'm not so interested in private equity, so I got to learn more about you. And finally, because he wouldn't give up, I invited him to Waco, and I said, we'll spend a day with you just to learn who Riverside is, because culture is extremely important to us. We've worked so hard to create these relationships with our franchisees. It's really a people business. We don't need anybody coming in to destroy what we've worked so hard to build. So Riverside came in. Stuart Cole, who's one of the co-founders, came in with this gentleman, Lauren, another one of the partners in the firm came, and then an analyst came. We spent the whole day just visiting about who is Riverside, what's Riverside's background. And I'll never forget, they brought a brochure, and this is the old days when the internet didn't have everything you needed to know about a company. They brought a brochure that had pictures of the key people in the organization, and it was entitled The Principled Professionals. And I'm here to tell you, at the end of that first meeting, gut says a lot, first impression says a lot to us. At the end of that first meeting, we thought, they really are who they say they are. And we continued to have a conversation. Being publicly traded, it took a while to get the deal done. And we had another suitor who actually was willing to pay us just a little bit more than Riverside was. We chose to go with Riverside because we felt like they were such a great fit for the Dwyer Group.
Walk us through the interview process. Walk us through that.
So I'm very protective, and I think the speakers this morning talked about how family-run businesses, there are babies, even though it was a publicly traded company. So I asked Riverside for all the CEOs they had done business with, any CEO that they had acquired a company from, any CEO that was no longer with the company, and I called every single one of them.
Yeah, in the history of the world, no one has ever done that.
Back then it wasn't that many. Today it would be a much harder thing to do with Riverside.
There's 400 of them now.
They were much smaller, so I think I had 30-something people to call. And the big question was, if you had the chance to do business again with Riverside, would you do it? And every one of them, even though some of them ran into some learning challenges, they all said, absolutely, they're fair, and they'll always live up to their commitment. Whatever they say they're going to do, they'll do. And that's what I needed to hear.
Did you look at any other private equity firms?
We did. We had to. We were publicly traded, right? So we had to give the opportunity for others to bid up. And so we did, but Riverside still went out. And again, they were about a nickel less per share than the highest bidder, but we felt like they were the right fit.
And what was the unique traits of Riverside that made them better, step above everyone else?
Number one, great listeners. So number one is, I think, is they really were trying to understand who the Dwyer Group was and how important our relationship with the franchisee was. Couldn't just be managed through the contract. And at that time, we had a lot of franchisees too. They had a brain trust that we didn't have. So as Pam said, one of our values is asking clarifying questions if we disagree or don't understand. And I appreciated that there could be a group that could come in and help us think better about the company and how to take it to the next level. So they had this wonderful brain trust. But trust is the key word. I think we trusted that they were going to be partners, that they were going to come in and micromanage our business, but help us really take the business to the next level, and that they did.
So Pam, I'd like to get your perspective from the other side. What was it about the Dwyer Group that you really liked, that you wanted to invest in?
I think there were really three things. Number one, we as a firm really like franchising. We like the recurring revenue. We just like it. And there's scarcity of assets there. There are not a lot of businesses other than restaurant concepts where you can really scale a franchise business. So this was one of them. Hence the reason we bought it twice. So more on that later. And the second thing was really the management team. Just a fantastic management team that was really committed to growing the business, shared goals, was very open to input from us. And then the third thing was really strong visibility on how we could grow. So, whether it was organic or whether it was adding more brands, we saw both of those opportunities.
So Dina, the due diligence process, it's not like a one-day type thing, right? It's quite considerable. Can you go back to that phase of that transaction, looking at the due diligence, and maybe tell the audience things that you would do over again or change?
The good news is Riverside was very clear with us about the expectation that it was going to be an in-depth process. In fact, on the reference calls, I asked a few people about, so tell me about the diligence process. They said, well, just think about it this way. They're going to ask you to stand on the table naked. And I thought, oh, I don't like the idea of that. But since we were publicly traded, we had our ducks in a row, right? Everything was already disclosed. So I think it was much easier for us and probably many other companies, but still it took us a year to get through this process. It was their first public to private transaction as well. But the bottom line is they were very clear with us about what we were going to have to share with them, and they really had to understand the company and dig in deep. They need to do that to protect their investors. So it was a long process and it took a lot of time, but my CFO in particular did a great job working with them.
And Pam, what was your experience on your side of the due diligence?
You know,
Did you stand naked next to him?
yeah, really.
No, it wasn't that bad after all.
No, it wasn't. Well, I mean, Dina's right that because they were public, they had a lot more information than we typically get, especially our fund that buys companies $7 million in EBITDA and below. Those companies very rarely have financial information, so often, you know, we go, wait, these numbers are not the same numbers that we saw originally. So, but interestingly, when we bought the company the second time, the risks had changed quite a lot. When we bought the company in 2003, their system for managing their franchise was really cutting edge. I mean, it was new. Well, fast forward 10 years, and it's not really up to the speed we needed it to be for managing now. Similarly, in 2003, if you wanted to advertise, buying the biggest ad you could in the yellow pages was the way you did it. I mean, how many people have ever even seen yellow pages in the last 2 years, right? So now everything has to be digital, everything has to be Yelp reviews. It's just a whole different way of thinking about it. So those were the issues we focused on the second time. The first time was really just reliance on management, and they were more, to Kyle's point, around the deal itself. We'd never done a public to private transaction. There were all kinds of tax issues, there were shareholder issues. This was all stuff we just had not experienced before.
So you both mentioned that the business was bought out twice, not once, but twice. So I think that's a fabulous story. So I'd love to hear both of your perspectives of being bought out not once, but twice. Talk us through that.
So when you're partnering with the right private equity group, you actually do become friends. I mean, I spent the night at Pam's home last night, and that's the kind of relationships. Kyle, I think you mentioned again that's what happens in the right relationships. So really got to know the people at Riverside in a big way. And I'm an investor in some of their other funds as well. So I teased from the day they sold us in 2010 to another private equity group, which was a wonderful TZP. They were a great group to team up with, and Riverside allowed us to pick them as our partner. So that's another thing that they lived up to the promise of. I said, what do we do when we go to exit? Because I want to be involved in that process of picking the next partner. And they said, absolutely, you'll be involved unless there's some huge disparity in what price is being paid. And that made perfect sense. So I got sidetracked on that one. Oh, on the coming back. So from the get-go, when we sold in 2010, Riverside sold their investment in Dwyer. I said, I want you guys to buy us back, but you'll have to raise a lot more money because we're going to be worth a lot more when you come back to buy us the second time. So we just maintained a wonderful relationship. Would visit from time to time when I was in the city. And about 3 years after they sold us, I get a call from Stuart Cole, again, the co-founder who originally met with me in Waco, Texas. And he said, Dina, you've been teasing about us buying you back. We just raised $1.5 billion. We're having a hard time putting our money to work with companies that we believe we can trust are going to take their businesses to the next level. We love those things Pam just mentioned about Dwyer. Would you entertain repartnering with Riverside again? And you know, we know your current private equity partner is not going to be ready because there's so much opportunity for growth. But if we paid a premium, would they be interested? And we were very interested. We'd rather know what our future would be like versus wondering what our future might be like with a new private equity partner. So they came back and did just what they said they would do. And they invested, they paid a premium. Just to take you through the numbers quickly, we were doing about $7 million in EBITDA in 2003 when they first bought us. In 2010, when they sold us, we were doing about $18.4 million in EBITDA. When they bought us back in 2014, we were doing about $29 million in EBITDA. This year, because they've reinvested, we'll end the year at about $49 million. in EBITDA. 2.5 years later. Not even a half.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I have to give the credit to the team at Riverside. They work very hard, and we've done that through acquisitions as well as organic growth. But our CEO and the team at the Dwyer Group have done an incredible job working with Riverside to make this happen. Powerful.
Right, well, and from our side, I talked about average, I know we had a little disagreement about what average means, but multiples are super high in the US. And so for us to make money for our investors, we need to take risk off the table. So all those things I said the first time we bought Dwyer still held true, but for us this time, even though we knew we had to pay a high multiple, we knew this management team. We knew what the forward growth trajectory looked like. So we de-risked it for ourselves, even though we did play quite a fulsome multiple the second time.
I don't think it was at the average, though. The new average.
Yeah, well, that's new average of 2016 and 14. It wasn't that high.
But we were happy. We sold back, as you can tell. So.
Right, and so de-risking the transaction, and Dina was actually started a trend. We've now bought 2 other companies back, largely because we still like those management teams, and we can still really trust what's happening. So. We found that to be an interesting strategy. Our investors are scratching their heads a little bit, but when they see how much money we're making for them, then they're fine about it.
Dina, you started 2 trends, right? 2 trends. Publicly traded company was the first one, and buying them back. So excellent. So Natalie had brought this up earlier. And ladies, I'm so honored to have a female senior private equity executive and a female CEO. And you must tell the audience, in a male-dominated business world, kind of, sort of, how it is. How is life as a CEO and a senior executive? How is life in this male-dominated world?
Well, and I don't mean to correct you, but I'm co-chairman now because I did promote Mike Biddle to be our CEO. But I did grow up in a male-dominated set of industries, right? Plumbing, electrical, appliance repair. So all of my worlds have been male-dominated, but I find it's kind of a delightful opportunity because as women, we get an opportunity to do things that if we weren't women, we wouldn't be getting the opportunity to do. So I'm not somebody who complains about it. I want more women to have the same opportunities, so we're out encouraging more women to get involved. But I have not seen it as a negative, to be frank with you. When we were publicly traded, in fact, I'd go out and I'd do the Dog and Pony Show, and I'd be the only woman presenter, so we'd be remembered because of that. So I think there's lots of opportunity for women. We just have to help them along in these male-dominated fields. And they do really well. I mean, Riverside is a real example. Pam's the only executive I know at the level she's at in a private equity group that's a woman. But below her, there's a lot of other women now involved in the firm.
Well, I think that's the thing. Dina and I both think that girls, we'll say girls, sometimes get in their own way because they think they can't. I think for both of us, we sort of grew up and just did it. I mean, I'll now tell a joke just because, I'm here. But I was, so I was at an event in Chicago over the weekend, and Sinbad was one of the speakers, if all of you remember Sinbad. And Sinbad at one point said, you know how all you ladies get upset when guys leave the toilet seat up? Well, just remember, we're making it safe for you to sit down. So I think for both of us, living in this male-dominated world has really been not a problem. I just walk into every situation, as I know Dina does, and assume I'm as competent as anyone else in the room. And so what's the problem?
Yeah. Love what you're doing, you know what you're doing, no problem. We do appreciate, though, that there's no line in the women's bathroom when we come to these events. It's the first time there's a line for men and there's not a line for women.
Right. It's just awesome.
Look at the positive. Right.
I'm going to switch over to vision. I think vision is a very, very important thing. And Pam, as you were looking at Dina and the Dwyer Group's company, did you have a shared vision, or when you were taking over the company, did you have a different vision? How did the vision work out with you?
So first I'm going to push back on the taking over thing, because I think we view all of our investments as partnerships.
Partnerships, yes.
But our goal always on the control side is to double or triple EBITDA. That's just a universal goal we have. So when we're looking at companies, we want to see the opportunity to double or triple EBITDA. I think from Dina's side, she just wanted to grow. So So we were aligned. We were very much aligned there.
We're also investors, so my family partnership still has a large investment in the Dwyer Group, and what's so fun about all this is our leadership team, pretty deep. Riverside's been very kind to allow our leadership team to take equity stakes, and they have opportunities too. So the first round, we helped a lot of people achieve their financial independence targets. You know, whether they become a millionaire or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. They achieve their financial independence targets, and that's very rewarding for us. In addition, Riverside supported me in giving a very nice bonus to the employees, so all the employees were bonused. But our vision's the same. It's a return for all the shareholders, and we're all shareholders, and our franchisees are shareholders too, because as they invest, as Riverside invests in the business, we're building the equity for our franchisees and their businesses, who will one day sell as well, right? They'll sell their franchise businesses one day too. So it's just a winning combination, and it's not perfect. I mean, I will admit that as you get into any relationship with a private equity group, as great as Riverside is, you run into some challenges. You know, it's like any partnership, but the great news is they'll listen. They'll hear you out, and you'll come to a conclusion that is in the best interest of everybody. And that's what I've discovered both times, because there's learning that goes on. But as long as you're dealing with people that you believe are truly partners versus controlling, it all works out. We would never have sold to them the second time had we not felt that the first time around.
There's some great stories in your book, Live Rich, and one of them we talked about was about your present CEO. I think the audience would love to hear that story.
Yeah, with our values, you know, we work hard to attract people that are aligned with our values, whether they're employees or franchisees, and again, private equity partners. So just a quick story of our current CEO. He's been with the company 32 years. So he was recruited away from Shell Oil. So our executive VP of franchise sales, who today is still our executive VP of franchise sales, recruited him from Shell. He opened a franchise for one of our brands in Tucson, Arizona, so he got to go back home so he could live where he wanted to, start his own business. And then he quickly became our first multi-concept franchisee. He owned multiple brands, also became what's called a domestic master licensee, so he helped sell franchises for those brands in his area. And then we invited him to Waco after my father passed away in '95 to run one of our brands, the flagship company, Rainbow International. He did that well, and then along the way he wore many different hats. So he's run almost every one of our businesses up into the ones that we just newly acquired over the past 2 years, and was the right guy to put in the president and CEO role. He had the experience as a franchisee, so he understood and appreciated the franchisee's perspective, but had also worn many of the hats in the organization.
Excellent. I want to talk about risks. Obviously, when you're partnering in this type of relationship, there's a lot of risks that's associated with it. So can you share with everyone, on both sides, what the risks were? What are the things that you were afraid of in terms of this transaction?
Yeah. The first transaction, what I was afraid of is, are they really going to be who I think they are? Even though I checked all the references, you're still not quite sure. It's kind of like getting married, right? You think you're marrying the right person, but boy, things can change. And the things didn't change. In fact, some of the things that we ran into, we went out and bought a big company, bigger than the Dwyer Group, just after we closed the deal. Yeah, so we closed the deal October 31st of 2003. January 2nd of 2004, we bought a company called Harman Auto Glass, basically a competitor to our Glass Doctor business. And it was all company-owned operations, so we were taking those and franchising them. Very risky, but because Riverside believed in the management team, they supported us in that acquisition. So we went through a lot of growing pains, a lot of learning each other very quickly, and we still made it just fine, you know. And again, it worked out for us. So I think you just have to pick the right people and do your homework before you go into that relationship. And then have the conversation when it needs to be had. Sometimes people are afraid to have the tough conversations, and I found with Riverside, always have the tough conversation when something's bothering you.
Excellent. Pam, how about your perspective?
I do think that's true. I think in this case, because Dwyer was such a values-based organization, heavy reliance on the management team was something we focused on a lot, because, you know, if that management team were to get unhappy and leave, and we would lose that values-based culture, that would be a problem, because in a franchise business, you're really managing through influence, not fiat, and the only way you can do that is to have a common set of values around which everybody focuses. And then everything else was really more technical. I think multiples, just a word on multiples, much more of an art than a science. We have had, and small companies do trade at much lower multiples for sure, But one thing for every business owner to think about is, what is your industry? So we once owned this plastic extrusion company. It made, strangely, spirometers, the thing you blow into in a doctor's office to test your lung capacity, and bowling pins. Okay? So in those days, yeah, really strange. In those days, a plastic extrusion company traded at about a 5 multiple, and a healthcare company traded at about an 8. So we sold off the bowling pins, and now we have a healthcare company, and that's all we did. And suddenly, you're selling a company that has an 8 times multiple. So, you know, for your clients or some of your business owners, it's really worth thinking about what industry are you in, and are you in an industry that is going to trade at a low multiple versus a high multiple?
Excellent.
That's a real divergence from the question you asked
That's okay.
me about.
Excellent. Dina, you're in a family business, and just wondering about the communication that you had with the family as you were preparing this transaction, and how did that all work out?
Yeah, again, we were publicly traded, but our family owned the majority of the business the first time around. So we decided to hire a banker. We knew that there were too many emotions involved as a family. 5 brothers and sisters, my mother, and then an ex-brother-in-law were all part of the leadership team at the company back then. And so we really needed a professional to help us work through this, take the emotions out as much as we could, and take their guidance. And that's exactly what we did, and I think we were very successful. Today I still consider us a family business, but I'm really the only one that's engaged in the business on more of a full-time basis. And then one sister still involved as a consultant. But we're all owners, so we all still love the business. We're all still very committed to helping grow the business.
Excellent. That was something that we had discussed. We talked about code of values. We talked about the presidential election. And Dina, you're working with the Republican Party. So I want you to tell the audience about what you're doing with
So here's the good news, and I'm happy to work with the Democratic Party too. So I was invited, I had a chance, I do some work on Capitol Hill for small business issues, especially related to franchising. Joint employer is one of the current ones we're dealing with. So last fall I had the opportunity to meet with the highest ranking woman in the House on the Republican side, Kathy McMorris-Rogers. And Kathy was shocked that we actually reviewed our values at every meeting of 3 or more people. So that's one of the unique systems around Dwyer's core values is we keep them front and center. I mean, if there's 3 of us meeting, we're going to talk about the values. It may not be all 15, but we're going to talk about at least a value. And she's like, wait a second, are you telling me you review your values at the beginning? And she couldn't believe it. And I said, yes. She goes, we created values at a strategic planning summit last summer. We've done nothing with them. Could you help me? I said, I'd be delighted to help you. Her organization, so she's the chairman of the conference, which is the Republican conference, 247 members of the House. And she's also a representative for Washington, the state of Washington, and the district there. So we took her 30 employees and 4 chiefs of staff through taking their values and creating, their acronym is SERVE, by the way. I wanted to remind them, you serve the people of the United States of America. And so they were able to come up with SERVE, and they've got, you know, service, excellence, whatever the values are, with very key behavior statements. They've been doing that now since last October, and her organization is changing for the better. So she invited me to speak at a congressional retreat in January. So I got to speak before about 100 members of Congress about the importance of values. Paul Ryan, I was at the table with him and looking right at him as I'm speaking. Paul Ryan, somebody's got to change this, and you're the guy who can get this started, but you've got to lead by example first. Your executive leadership committee's got to lead by example first. So he's still toying with it, so I'm hopeful. Say your prayers for me that we'll make some progress. It's going to be slow. It's going to be a slow progress. It's a marathon, right? Not a sprint. But at least we're evangelizing the values, and we're at least getting their attention. We had a long way to go, but they had 3 speakers at that particular retreat that spoke about values, so they know that there's a need. Now they just have to take it,
keep after them,
and live it.
Excellent. I just want to stop for a second and see, I'm sure that there's business owners here, there's advisors here that probably have some questions for the ladies. So let's open it up for questions. Brian.
Great presentation. One question is, what are some of the specific issues that you encounter related to a public-private transaction?
So first of all, you've got shareholders, right? So you've got to notice all the shareholders. You can have recalcitrant shareholders who don't like the value, so that's always a challenge. That's one of the reasons it took so long.
Right.
And then there were some really significant tax issues that we had to just work through to make sure that we weren't causing untoward taxable events for everybody involved.
And one of the problems I remember clearly, because I had to live it, is we were acquiring this company called Harman Auto Glass, and during the process, we were still not closed with our deal on Riverside. So we, as a management team, to be fair to our shareholders, couldn't get involved in this acquisition in too much detail. So we couldn't spend our time and energy. Our shareholders were paying us to get involved in something that was going to be a future asset, future benefit to the private equity buyer. So we had to back off of that. And so Riverside had to create a team to get in there and work on buying this company for us until we closed the deal with them. And because of that, there were just a lot of complications because Riverside didn't know what we knew about franchising. They, believe me, they did the best that they could, but we were asked not to participate by our attorneys on the public company side of the house. And that was a real frustration. But Riverside didn't do anything wrong, it's just the way it was, but I'll never forget that. So that was a complication.
But there's no question that we also did not know a lot about franchising. We've learned a lot since 2003. We're sort of a different animal now in terms that we've bought a number of franchise businesses, but the accounting in franchising is really different than accounting in any other type of industry, so we had to learn about that, and there was just a lot for us to learn.
Question back there.
After participating in Undercover Boss, did you change anything in the deal that followed? Did that affect you in your thinking and your approach to the deal with Brother?
Yeah, my reason for going to cover was twofold. One is what a wonderful marketing opportunity. I can't track it anymore, but more than 50 million viewers have been exposed to our episode, and it continues to re-air all the time. So great marketing opportunity, but I went undercover to find out if our code of values was truly making it to the front line. Those are not our employees. Now we have some 13,000 frontline team members representing our brands across the globe, and we want to make sure the franchisees are training them on living our values. And the good news was, 2 out of the 4 folks that I spent time with, and you spend a full day when you're undercover like that, filming a lot of hours to get the 45-minute episode, they truly lived the values, so our franchisees were doing a good job. The biggest thing that probably came out of that is our franchisees were quite frustrated that I ended up meeting with a franchisee who wasn't following all of our systems. The reason franchisees are successful is that they follow the system, right? It's all about following the systems for success. Yet he was following most of the systems, but franchisees got really frustrated. How could you have a guy on there that wasn't following the system? I'm like, wait a second, we had no choice. We didn't pay to be an Undercover Boss. That was an opportunity for us. And we couldn't edit anything, we had no control. So they put me with a franchisee, and then I would ask these angry franchisees, so what would have happened if we would have followed you around with the cameras? They're like, well, you know, I'm kind of glad you didn't. So the greatest gift from that is that our franchisees understand how important it is to deliver on the brand promise. I will have customers, I kid you not, today that will reach out to me, whether it's email, Twitter, LinkedIn, a phone call to say, you'd be so proud, Dina. It's like you become friends with people when you're on reality TV. You'd be so proud. We had Mr. Electric out and they did all 14 steps. We counted. So it's really been a gift to our organization, and it continues to be a gift. Not only did we award probably 35 franchises to date to people who had an interest, lots and lots of leads. We also began a Women in the Trades program, so that's another great thing that came out of it. There is an opportunity for women to be in our businesses. Some of them are great at fixing stuff, but they understand the customer. So there's a Women in the Trades program that we launched as a result of the show too. That's really, I'm very passionate about it because I think there's big opportunities for women.
Excellent.
Hi, Nina Kaufman from Business Exponential. Question for both of you. With millennials in the workforce, there's a stereotype that, they're values-driven, but they're not necessarily loyal, they don't stay very long. What is your experience? What are you actually seeing either in terms of millennials working their way up the franchising and also on your end evaluating companies and possible employee turnover as a result of millennials in the workforce?
They do love values. They love working for companies with purpose. They do want to move up in the organization very quickly though. So it's setting the expectations early on, and we're actually getting better at that. We have not been good at that. So we actually have hired a recruiting and retention specialist who worked at Kohl's department store with many millennials for a number of years. So we're really being thoughtful about how do we help the millennials understand career pathing in our organization, that you don't go from being somebody walking in and working at the front desk to being a supervisor on the marketing team, 6 months later. But they do love the values-based business. They love businesses with purpose. And frankly, they work very hard. These are not folks who go home and quit working at 5 o'clock. My experience, we're hiring mostly the right ones. They're the ones who are still emailing me at 10 o'clock at night because I got an idea.
Yeah, similarly, I think, in finance, obviously it's a very competitive world, very hardworking. But I do think the style of communications is really different. So we had an experience where we were looking at a media company, and one of our senior advisors said, would you like to meet with Rupert Murdoch? He's a friend of mine. And our young analyst goes, no, I can get what I need from Google. We're all going, no, that's really the wrong answer. So we do have these moments where we go, okay, we need to change this outlook a little bit. But we have not had the experience of, now we both work in heavily values-based organizations, so it may be that we don't have that kind of turnover because our folks really like where they are and they have promotion opportunity and the work is interesting.
Yeah.
Which I think is another thing millennials don't want to be standing at not that anyone makes copies anymore, but if you had to make copies, they don't want to be standing at the copier. They want to be doing something that they feel is valuable.
This is for both of you. I know you own a lot of franchises and Pam, you invest in a lot of small to mid-sized companies. How do you help your company stay abreast of the latest technologies, especially small companies across America? I mean, before you know it, especially in the retail space, they get Amazon, or So how do you help them compete against the behemoths out there?
I could speak for one of the concerns Riverside had buying us back the second time was keeping up with this whole digital marketing world, right? Uber. Is somebody going to come in and Uberize home service delivery? And they're trying, right? There's plenty of companies out there spending a lot of money. So it was a valid concern. So the good news is Riverside is investing now. This is why we've come up with this overarching brand called Neighborly, the community of home service experts, because we can be our own. We are the only company of our size representing 12 distinct service businesses that can serve the same customer base. So technology-wise, they've made an investment in us to figure this out, but we're the last mile. So at Dwyer, we don't, we got to be cognizant of all that, but at the same time, whoever it is out there that's trying to Uberize home services, they still need the last mile. We handle the last mile, right? We got the 13,000 techs out there who are driving to the customer's home to take care of the business. It's not easy to teach people home services like to drive a car, right?
Right, yeah, for sure. And for us, one of the great things about Riverside is that because today we have about 81 companies in the portfolio, so our scale allows us to provide lots of different opportunities for our small companies. So we have something called the Toolkit. These are vetted consultants, which, Dina's used them, lots of people have used them. We have a program that we buy in bulk. So Dina was just telling me last night that they saved like 50 grand on UPS by joining Riverside, so that was helpful.
So it hit our budget whenever they sold us. It's like, man, we don't get that discount anymore.
And then we also run a university for the management teams of our companies because we think A, it's lonely at the top and they need to talk to each other, and B, it exposes them to exactly what you're talking about. So in recent years, we've had things like, should you use LinkedIn? Should you use Twitter? What's it beneficial for? Can you generate leads from any of these social media type opportunities? So lots of things that as a small company in Waco, Texas, you might not get exposed to. Dina's kind of a big company now, but when we first got together, she wasn't.
And the leadership summits are amazing. The summits they put on for the CEOs, and not just the CEOs, all the kind of C-level staff have an opportunity to come, and they've got different tracks that are really beneficial.
Any other questions? All right.
Amazing job, ladies. It was absolutely paradigm shifting, and the question is, how do we empower women to take on business ownership roles? Because many of my friends are lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, but they're not taking the next step of how do I actually make this business and put people under me? And when does that conversation start taking place? Because I think it's probably younger rather than older. So if you could shed some light on that.
And then as long as you talk about women in the trades, because I think that's important. But I think high school, I think you got to start in high school. I think one of the things that is a shared observation between Dina and myself is younger women in particular overthink. And so they're not willing to take the risk. They're not willing to say, oh my God. I mean, you know, Sheryl Sandberg and I were having breakfast one day, and this is in her book, but she said this young woman comes in her office and she's like, oh my gosh, you know, when I have children, how am I going to manage this? This is terrible. And she said, do you have a boyfriend? And the young woman went, no. So, you know, like, quit thinking so much, right? If you like what you're doing, you're gonna figure it out, right? I mean, you know, I happen to be married to someone who owns his own investment banking firm, and somehow our two children, who are 24 and 20, are quite well adjusted, seemingly, and you know, they've survived this experience of having two parents who run around a lot. And Ryan, I know somebody who works for Doug is here. Ryan, where are you?
Over here now.
Oh, okay. So I think, you know, it works. It works.
I think you said earlier we have to get out of our own way.
We
and
do.
I think so many women, it's their mindset that we've got this glass ceiling. I haven't run into it. So
Me either.
I'm not sure where it is, so I think you have to have confidence in who you are and what you're doing. But I love the idea of getting in front of the high school girls. In fact, just last week I spoke to 200 high school girls at our local technical college in Waco, and they're interested in non-female trades businesses, right? And it can be computer science even at that school, or it could be electrical. So I'm very excited with women in the trades to keep encouraging and inspiring young women. Your friends are already at that level. They've got to decide it's something they want to do to really take control over growing their businesses. I'd encourage other people who aren't already in their own businesses to consider a franchise at one of our companies. We can help them.
Yes,
we can help them be the CEOs of their own businesses very quickly.
I also think it's modeling the behaviors. I teach a class at Duke, top 10 ways to lose money in private equity. And just the fact that I'm there doing that, you know, I'll just sort of be bombarded with the young women in the class will go, you know, how could you be here?
Right.
So.
Any other questions? Oh, right here.
I think we hear a lot of good stories, which is great to hear, but maybe Pam, can you share the worst private equity deal you did and the reasons why?
Lessons
Almost got
in
out
the
of it.
loo.
Almost got out of it.
Right.
Yeah, do you want to explain what lessons of the loop are?
Yeah, of course they've been some challenges, and I've known Riverside now for, 13, 14 years, so in their bathrooms at all their headquarters, there's lessons from the loo or in the loo?
From the loo.
From the loo. So on the back door in every bathroom, there are all the mistakes that they have made in acquiring businesses. And she can tell you what the failure rate has been, but people defraud you. You know, so you do your diligence, but it's not what you thought it was. And it's amazing how people will work together to lie. So she's going to tell you that part of the story, but I think they remind themselves daily. If you're in the bathroom, you're pretty much reminded of, let's not make these same mistakes again.
It's a really good place to learn your lessons. But in any case, I do think Dina alluded to fraud. So we had one situation where the conference room where we were having our initial meetings was bugged. So when we would ask a question, there would be all these people running around putting together information that sounded like what we needed to have. And a lot of people ended up in jail. But the FBI actually said it was the worst incidence of fraud they had ever seen. So I'd say in our worst cases have been where we've been defrauded, and we've learned lots of lessons about how to look for signs of fraud. We have our new diligence process we call 3 squared, which is 3 people, 3 levels down in the organization for 3 days. Because very often what the CEO is telling you is not what the guy on the factory floor is going to tell you, and you want to make sure that those things are in sync. IT implementations have caused us problems at times where we've not done a good IT implementation. I think I do have 10 issues, but it would take us a long time. I think also holding companies too long. We owned a company called Olympic Boat, and we kept thinking, someday people are going to want to buy more boats. Someday they will. And we held on and held on and held on and watched it go like that. So, sink.
Watch it sink.
No pun intended. So now, so we have some process around that too, to make sure we don't fall in love with it's very easy for a private equity partner to fall in love with their company. So we try to make that happen.
Any other questions? All right, I'll ask the last question. What's the next chapter look like for the Dwyer Group? And that's for both of you.
Well, historically, Riverside has invested in 5 to 7 year holds. So we're in year 2.4 months right now, and we've already grown at this amazing pace. So I think we want to be the highest EBITDA company that Riverside's ever owned, getting the highest return for the investment they made in the Dwyer Group. And so whether that means we go to market in 2 years or 3 years, they won't hold us too long, although the first time it was 7 years because the recession had hit right about when we were going to go to market again. And actually it worked out to be a good thing at the end of the day. Not the recession, but the timing of how we handled that and that we kept working together. So we'd like to be on their walls. On their walls also they have their winners. Yeah. So their star companies are on their walls. I think we're like number, 6 or something, maybe not anymore, but we were. And I'm like, we got to be number 1 on this wall. So we intend to provide all the shareholders a great return, and at the same time our franchisees and employees benefit from that.
And we have a very shared vision there with Dina. Part of our process to ensure that we don't hold companies longer than we should is twice a year we get everybody together. One of our analytic teams does the analytics that says we can or we can't get more value out of this company, based on all of our resources, and therefore we should sell now. And then partners have to defend why we should continue to hold. So that's been a really good process, really good discipline process for us. But we too would like Dina to be number 1 on the wall.
And it's not Dina, it's the Dwyer Group, but I'm the cheerleader.
Yes, right. We would like the Dwyer Group to be number 1 on the wall.
Excellent. Just a reminder, Dina followed up her first book with the second book, Values, Inc. So another
Every representative in the House has that book. Whether they're going to read it, I don't know.
So I really want to thank you both. This was excellent. Really, really enjoyed. Thank you very much.